My name is Jason, and this is Just Watches. Today we have yet another watch on loan from a very supportive friend of the channel who goes by Crapsandclocks on Instagram. Now this is a Orient Star Royal. This is a level up from a regular Orient Star and a very interesting piece. Now before we get to the review, if you're enjoying the contents of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much. Now this watch is no longer in production, but you might be able to find this or a similar watch on Japanese auction websites. The case is 37mm in diameter, a short 44mm lug to lug. It's 14mm thick, but that does include about 1mm of this domed crystal and has a 19mm lug width opening. Now this case is mostly high polish with a small section of brushing on the top of the mid case. There are large high polished chamfers on the sides of the mid case that flow all the way down into the lugs. There's a nice balance between the caseback, mid-case, and high polished bezel that helps the watch appear a bit thinner than its 14mm thickness. While this has quite a few high polished surfaces, it's a very flashy watch, as you'll notice when we talk more about the hands and indices. Now I absolutely love the size of this case, and I really wish Orient Star made more cases in this size range today. The bracelet starts at 19mm and tapers down to 15 before jumping back up to 17 at the clasp. There's quite a bit of play in the end link, but the articulation against the back of the watch and between the links is excellent, two factors that greatly affect the comfort of a bracelet. The links are a combination of high polish and brushed surfaces. The clasp is very small, signed with the Orient Star logo, and then has high polished beveled edges. The scissor is nicely milled. There are only 2 micro positions, so sizing is going to be accomplished with half links. Overall, this bracelet is quite comfortable. The screw-in caseback helps provide 100 meters of water resistance and has a deep relief of the Orient Star Royal logo. There are also 2 circles of indentations around the edge that add a ton of visual interest and character to this caseback. I really like how it looks overall. The 5mm push-pull crown is signed with the Orient Star logo. While I think this crown is on the smaller side, this watch does not hand wind, so you'll only really be setting the time or changing the date with the crown. For these functions, it's an acceptable size, but if this watch was also hand winding, I would want the crown to be a bit bigger, as it's just a bit hard to grip when it's fully pushed in. The domed sapphire crystal has a facet around the edge that is just proud of the bezel. The dome rises about 1mm above the case at its tallest point. Orient Star uses some incredible anti-reflective coating on this crystal, which makes it all but disappear from many angles. Now I absolutely love AR like this and wish it was used on every watch. The only downside, and you might be able to make it out, is that it appears to have a small chip on the coating, which can be the downside to AR coatings, as from what I hear they're a little bit less resistant than the sapphire crystal itself, so you can get little flaws and imperfections if there is that coating on the outer surface. The dial is a very beautiful deep black. Now starting at the edge of the dial we have dashes for each of the minutes with the 5-minute designations indicated with Arabic numerals. Beautifully faceted applied indices mark out the hours with a frame date at 3. There is a large applied power reserve indicator at 12, and then at 6 we have the applied Orient Star logo and then Orient Star and Royal printed on the dial. Now the inner circle of the dial actually has a texture that's fairly subtle, but it will pop in certain lighting conditions. For hands, we have a set of beautiful, high polish, faceted hour and minute hands. They are a very interesting shape where the hands actually cut in near the hand stack. Now, these will catch light nicely, but they also added a white line down the center of each, which will help with legibility in some lighting conditions. The minute hand is also plenty long, reaching all the way to the edge of the dial. The second hand is a simple high polish affair with a simple counterbalance. However, the very sharp observer will notice the second hand is capped, so you cannot see the hole in the second hand where it attaches to the 4th wheel of the gear train. Now this is such a small detail, but it is a bit like the super clear anti-reflective coating used on the crystal. Once you notice small details like this, you're gonna start to wish more watches also capped their second hands. Here is the watch on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. Now obviously this is a perfect size for my wrist, and if you do have smaller wrist sizes, definitely check out watches in this size. And then again, this short lug to lug, you can also see from the side here, it's going to just make the watch wear very comfortably on smaller size wrists. Now as for pros and cons, first pro, Orient Star Royal. This is definitely a cut above Orient Star. You're going to notice when you have one of these in person, the level of finishing is exceptionally high. Second, obviously I love the size of this watch that combination of the small diameter and short lug to lug is going to make this watch wear it like a dream on smaller wrists. Second, I really like this handset. It's extremely well executed and finished, but then that small white line down the center really helps with legibility. This is a trick that Seiko Sarb uses, and it's very clever because on dress watches where you do have a black dial and high polish hands, in certain lighting conditions it can be really hard to make out those hands, and then those white lines which kind of make them pop off the dial. And then last, I love the super clear anti-reflective coating used. I have a few watches with this level of AR, and honestly it makes me like the watches that don't have this AR less. I just wish more brands would use this level of AR more often. As for cons, the lack of hand winding is tough on this watch. If this was your only watch and you wore it daily, it wouldn't be a problem, but having to shake it to get it going is a huge pain, especially when you're just used to watches that hand wind. And then second, I love power reserves, and they're definitely part of Orient Star's design DNA, but for some reason the applied power reserve indicator on this one is quite large and quite flashy, and I think it's just a bit too much on this dial. I think maybe if they had just printed the power reserve indicator, it might have opened up more of the blank space of the dial and made the power reserve less distracting overall. As for comps, it's a bit difficult just because this watch is no longer in production and things have changed a bit since then. I think the modern version of this watch might be the Orient Star. I'll link the reference below, but it's pictured on the screen. This one's 38.5, so it's slightly bigger, but it has somewhat similar design. Some things have been updated, but you'll notice it does have that textured center section of the dial in the center there, so a little bit comparable to this one. And then you could always consider the Sarks 057. Now I have the 5.5, which is the snowflake dial. The 5.7 is the black dial, and it has an incredible black dial, and it also uses, Seiko has a very similar, basically invisible anti-reflective coating, so it's going to be similar in that regard too. And then last, you might check out some of these new Citizen dress watches that came out. They have a couple really interesting dials. The one here is the kind of one that looks a bit like an oil slick. I have a review of the white dial version of this watch on the channel, and I'll put a link to that in the upper right hand corner now. So there you have it. What do you think about this Orient Star Royal? Let me know in the comment section below. As always, if you're enjoying the contents of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. That's all for this time. My name is Jason, and you've been watching Just Watches.